There is a video that I recorded quite a while ago now with a friend of mine. Basically, I've had another channel and I've been meaning to promote it on this channel because it's taken up most of my time. It's affected how what I put up on this channel and how often I do. Um, because it's an additional workload. It's not a bad thing. It's really good. It's just I'm trying to manage my time for this channel. I'm trying to change how I present videos here. This won't be a great example of that, but basically, I have plans to make videos on this channel that will be produced better and edited in a more interesting way and a bit more creative. But those plans have been put on hold because my time has been taken elsewhere. Also, I have interviews that I've conducted. I have the recordings and they've not been edited because I just haven't had the opportunity to revisit them. And it takes me a couple of days at least to edit a podcast, so that can be tricky. So I have a few of those in a folder waiting to be revisited. And I also have several artists who are expecting me to reach out soon for in-person interviews. Some of the ones I have recorded are in person, and some of the artists who are waiting are over Zoom. They're in other countries. The point being, I have plans to relaunch my podcast, which has been on hold for a moment. But the reason why I haven't done all these things is because the other channel that I've been working on is a podcast, and it's for interviews with painters. So without saying too much more, here is a video that I recorded quite a while ago. Look at the difference with my facial hair and how I look in this video compared to this introduction. I think I look younger now, but that's just the delusion of aging. Anyway, here's the video. Enjoy. This video is going to be telling you about this long-awaited announcement that I've been looking forward to sharing with the channel, which is the new podcast. Now, I've been linking that in lots of my videos in the description. It's called Painting Insights Podcast, and I'm joined by my co-host, Richard K. Blades. Richard, could you tell us about yourself and the podcast and how the idea came about?
Of course. So I'm a painter. I'm a contemporary painter. And Simon kindly invited me onto his podcast to talk about my work and my ideas. And that conversation led into us discussing having a podcast together where we interview contemporary painters about their practice, about their insights into how they work, about their studio routines, so inspirations. And it's been an amazing journey so far. We've had some great artists on board, and it really is fascinating for anybody who's interested in painting, how artists work, and want some inspiration. For me, the reason behind it was that as a painter, I spent a lot of time in the studio making work, and I wanted to have something that I would listen to. So that was the idea. And it's really worth looking at, watching, listening, and I hope you find inspiration from it.
I always mention when I talk about the podcast, it's usually when I'm doing an art video and I'll mention it in passing and say about how much I value what it offers, because for me it's like the greatest education, one in listening to the artist and listening to both of you discuss with each other different facets of being in the art world and making art. And then the other is the research that I do, because it's a lot of art history and learning names. And then there's a great feature in every episode, which is the color palettes. So I've been learning colors quite extensively because I obviously have to source the images. And then when it comes to editing them, I now have this file, or this folder, I should say, which I just open up and it's full of colors. And I've started to test myself and think, can I pick it out of all this plethora of different hues? Can I find the color? And it's getting harder. The more guests we have, it's harder
Mm.
to say which color is which because it's obviously growing. But it's such a privilege for me to be able to sit and just soak up all of this knowledge and culture from such interesting and talented people. So I've been very grateful to be part of the podcast and been really looking forward to presenting it in this type of video format for my viewers on my channel. Now, it's always linked in the description below, so I'd really appreciate your support. But I really do think that even if you don't paint, it will be interesting just to put it on in the background whilst you either draw or do whatever you're doing, you know, whatever podcast you usually put on or whatever you usually listen to. I find things like this fascinating as background entertainment that you can just enjoy whilst you get work done, whether it's writing, drawing, or whatever it is that you do, really.
And in a way, it's an art education, but you can be passive in it. You can just listen and absorb some of that. And what we found is that every artist they may be a painter, but they are so different in how they approach what they do, how they started, the colours they use, how they overcome obstacles. So as much as it is about the technical side of painting, the majority of it is about how artists think and how they work and how they structure their day and move forward on that creative journey. So even if you're a musician, you draw, you're a graphic artist, animator, whatever, I think there's something in there for everybody, really.
Mm. Well, I was fortunate enough to come across your channel or your account on Instagram quite a while ago. So I'd been following you for quite a while, but I was fortunate enough to have you as a guest on the podcast. And it was eye-opening because I didn't research well enough before to know as much as you shared with me. Is there anything that you can share? Because your process is quite different than the guests that we have, because I think they're always surprised and impressed by how you make your paintings, just like I am. Can you share a little bit about your process and how you make art?
Sure. So I wouldn't class myself as an observational painter. The majority of, if not all of our guests so far have been observational painters, i.e. they are looking at something and trying to create a representation of what they're seeing. I tend to work based on memory or indirect observation, in the sense that I spend a lot of time in nature and sometimes will make thumbnail sketches, but they're very minimal. They're just a couple of lines of the composition. Most of my work tends to come from both memory and imagination. The observational side is I'm constantly looking at the sky. I paint a lot of skies, a lot of seascapes and landscapes. I'm making these colour notes as I'm observing the sky. And then they're feeding into a much more intuitive and even abstract way of painting. And again, a lot of those painters that we've talked to are much more, they're either plein air painters, so they're out and they're watching things as they happen, or they are still life painters or portrait painters, where observation is absolute key. I tend to work a little bit differently, and art history, painting process, materials are all very, very important to me. So I have this background, mainly autodidactic. So I learned most of it myself. I went to university for art, but didn't learn that much, to be honest. So this fascination for me with art history, of looking at other painters, Constable Turner, and the landscape, this all feeds into how I work. And I'm always happy to talk about it and compare myself and reflect with those other artists and their practice and learn from them as well. And I think as an artist, we have to find our own way. There's no right way or wrong way. As long as you're consistent and you keep working and you keep learning, both for yourself and from others, then you are an artist. And however you choose to be, that's fine. But it can take a long time to develop your own way of working and own methods. And thankfully I have, but it's taken a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you say about how little university offered for the education in the structure they gave, because obviously you've mentioned in a recent podcast how you'd spent a lot of the time in the library reading about artists, and the knowledge that you share in each episode, just it naturally as it occurs, is usually very impressive and surprising to me and to other artists, because you'll know a lot about colors and a lot about the nuances of different paints and pigments and how they were processed and came about, and things like that are additional to what usually an art education will entail anyway. So things like that are just lovely to really add a lot of texture and background to the podcast as well.
I think as well with it, and I'm not anti university or art college, but I do want to sort of express that there is an alternative way of doing it. You may be interested in conceptual art and ideas around that, and that's cool and fine. And I am, and I'm conceptual with how I write about my work. But if you want to learn about painting, and Andrew Tischler talks a lot about this in our most recent episode, there are ways to do that. My way was just to read, look at go to galleries, go to art shops, look at the pigments on the back of a tube of paint, just say, not just say that's blue, I'm going to get that blue, understand the blues, experiment, try things out. There is this whole world of information. So this podcast really is about providing that information, for everybody, wherever they are in the world. And that's why we talk to these well-established artists, because the majority of them didn't go to art school, I would say. The majority we've talked to, they're self-taught, and their wealth of knowledge is vast because of that. And this podcast is about providing that information, or those painting insights for everybody else. This is what I wanted when I was, again, in my studio many years ago, thirsty for that knowledge. So this is what we're trying to provide here.
Yeah. Well, we're currently on episode 13, and today I'm going to be interviewing the first gallery owner and manager that we will have featured. And the thing which I'm interested in is that if we do start to have curators, frame makers, and gallery owners, as well as more abstract artists, it's going to be a very broad spectrum of knowledge to do with the art world that will be encompassed in the podcast and on the channels. What channels, I mean, aside from YouTube, which is the one which I link in the description, what other channels are available to see the podcast here?
So you can get the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and that is just Painting Insights Podcast. You can get it on Spotify, and that's Painting Insights Podcast again. It's also available on most other platforms as well. So if you listen through Amazon Podcasts, for example, you'll be able to find it on there. They're the major platforms. We've also got an Instagram, and that is at painting_insights_podcast.
Yeah.
And we've just set up a Facebook page as well, and that would be Painting Insights Podcast. So it's sort of spread across these different platforms, and I think we both understand that there are myriad ways of consuming information, and I always thought it would be important to have it along with the YouTube thing, is have it as an audio version only. And that's a lot because I think of the artists working in their studio painting, that the audio means that then they can also focus on their painting as well, rather than watching the screen as well. But then, as I have done, I've sat and watched some of the episodes in the evening when I'm chilling out, so I get that visual thing as well.
Yeah.
We're also getting transcriptions of the podcast. And this will be something in the future, we'll build a bit more of a website around it. But it's all about being able for the viewers, listeners, and potential readers to be able to access it in myriad ways. So that's the idea.
Fantastic. And lastly, I'll just say that Richard's also a teacher, and we are we've set up, but we are now just building the Patreon for Painting Insights. So if you are able to support on Patreon, that'll make a world of difference, because it's something which we're offering additional content, and there'll be potential bits of tutorials and additional footage from some of the artists that we talk to. And that's something that we are in the process of constructing at the moment. So there's lots to look forward to. There'll be all the links in the description of this video. If you have any curiosity about painting, or just looking for entertainment at all, but especially if you engage with painting and make anything yourself creatively, it's right up your alley. I hugely recommend it. I feel very grateful to be part of this project, and I appreciate you featuring on the channel, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks so much.
Just another quick bonus piece of information about the Painting Insights channel. When it was first starting, I was keen to make sure that we had everything that we needed, from the kind of editing which I provide for Good Values podcast, the questions which I found quite interesting, which curiously took a bit of a turn where I realized that me listening to Richard's conversation with the guest was better for the podcast, for me to kind of take a bit of a sidekick seat and just chip in questions along the way, which has had some hilarious results at times, but I'll discuss that later on down the line. But one of the other things that I wanted to do for the channel was to make sure that we had a theme tune and an intro sequence. So here are the first, because I think I made 3, so here are the first 2 which I made. Well, here's the first one. I quite like that. I thought it was quite nice, and bits of the footage is, some of it's longer, some of it's, cut down. So here is the second edit that I made for the intro sequence. Now, you have to remember not only the footage that I went out and did that day. So I ran down to the beach, and on the way to the beach, there was this little area where it had just some nice plants around and a bit of a pond. And then obviously the palette knife footage and things like that. But it's also making the music for each one. So I had these candidate jingles that I'd made and sent them all to Richard to give me his opinion on which one he liked best. And he picked the third one. So this is the intro and outro sequence that we use for Painting Insights podcast. Here it is. And that is what I prepared and cut together in that day. It was an exciting day. We had all these ideas of what it should look like, what it should sound like, what it should be. And I thought, if I can just get something cut together just to show him, I have every intention of making this happen along with him. And he does plenty for the podcast as well. I mean, he's got a very good, well-established profile, because he's earned it over a long period of time of him painting and creating this amazing body of work. He's got a lot of followers, well deserved as well. He's a lovely person. He teaches, he does work with charities. He's a very nice guy. And basically, he also does the thumbnails for each episode, and he deals with a lot of the different platforms that the podcast gets launched on. So he does a lot of the managing for the podcast, which I do the editing of the episodes and obviously cut together the intro sequence. So that was just a little bit of insight into the production of the intro, and I thought I'd share that with you. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this video, but I hope you enjoy the podcast and you do give it a look. But it's already doing well. It's already got a lot of followers and subscribers and supporters and listeners. So please join in, check out the podcast, leave a comment, subscribe, and do all the things that on whatever platform it's asking you to do, because it helps spread it around. And I think it's going to be an incredibly valuable resource. I will be doing my solo podcast again. It's just been delayed because this has taken priority, you know, making it sure that it kind of gains momentum. And I do have, I think, something like 4 episodes recorded that haven't been edited to be uploaded. And I have several people who've asked to be guests, which I love, because I always have to reach out to people to be guests. And now I've got several artists saying that they want to be guests, which is lovely. So I do have people who I'm going to interview soon. And even though I'm going to interview them soon, I don't know when they're going to be uploaded and when Good Values is going to start again. So yeah, check out the links in the description below for everything Painting Insights podcast. And also, I have a Simon Says Artwork Patreon. I usually do an advert in the video. In this one, instead, I'm just going to tell you that if you are able to support my Patreon, I've been uploading a video per month, and I'm about to upload the second one for this month because I missed last month. It was just too busy in October, but I've already recorded all of the elements for the second video, so that's going to be going up soon. So if you can support me on Patreon, the link for that is in the description of this video as well. Thanks for watching. Okay, so that is the video, and I am hoping that you will visit the channel and support it, because there is an amazing resource for anyone who's interested in art and especially painting, but it's really good conversations with professional working artists and very high level artists as well. So I've been using it for a bit of an education, to be honest, and a lot of encouragement and inspiration to paint myself. So I've been, not paint myself, but for myself to paint, and I have been painting quite a bit recently. So there's a lot that I want to talk about on this channel, but for this video I just wanted to present the new podcast. It's not really new anymore. We started it last year and we're on the 3rd season, so check it out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon with some daily art challenge videos that I have been making, but I've not been editing and uploading yet, but they will all be coming soon. That's a series I'll be doing soon. Lots of painting, bits of drawing, and, you know, some crazy creative stuff. So I will see you soon. Thanks.